Welcome to ChiroSphere, where we talk about all things chiropractic and some things, well, not so chiropractic. And today may be one of those days. I'm Dr. Ray Foxworth, your host of ChiroSphere and CEO of Chiro Health USA, the network that works for chiropractic. Today we get to hear from a true Renaissance woman, Dr. Cindy Howard. She's not your average guest. She's a modern-day superhero with a diverse array of talents. From her days as a modern dancer to dominating the powerlifting circuit with title wins, Dr. Howard has seemingly transitioned into the roles of chiropractic internist, nutritionist, national speaker, and now author. Her latest endeavor, Positively Altered, is not just a book. It's a powerful anthology of 34 captivating stories, 3 poignant postscripts, and 1 resounding message. Embrace life's challenges and unapologetically live in love in our own unique way. Today, we'll delve into her journey, insights, and the transformative wisdom she shares in Positively Altered. But before we do, Cindy, I had the opportunity to listen to your audiobook on the way down to Orange Beach, and I have to tell you that I never anticipated having to have a conversation with my teenage daughter about dick pics, pubic hair art, and the drapes and carpet not matching. That's a hard one to explain, so thank you. It was an interesting ride down. So if the listeners want to know what I'm talking about or what Cindy was talking about, get her book quickly.
So I guess I have to ask, did it strengthen the relationship or are you both in therapy now?
No, she may need. Well, what was funny is she was riding in the back seat, right? And so I'm seeing her in the rearview mirror, and these things come up, as we're listening to the book, and she's looking at me like, what in the hell is wrong with Papa Ray listening to this stuff? And I finally had to tell her, I said, this is an audio book by a friend of mine, and had to go through the story. She said, well, now that makes sense. I was prepping for the podcast. So,
Oh
yeah.
my goodness. I'll share with you. So it's a funny story, right? The very first book that I sold in my practice that a patient purchased was an older woman in her late 70s. And I take care of the whole family, grandma, mom, daughter, right? So they've been patients for a very long time. She's a lovely woman. I adore her, but pretty reserved, right? And so she walks out with the book, and all I can think about is the chapter where I actually use the word cock. And
Yep.
I'm picturing this woman sitting in her rocking chair, right, reading this, going, I have to get a new physician. This is not going to work, from this point forward. And I'm mortified a little bit. So now you fast forward, she comes in for an appointment. We sit down. I'm actually quite nervous about it because I know she's read the book. And she says, so I have to tell you something. She goes, I read the book. And I said, and what'd you think? She goes, it was great. She goes, I was a little uncomfortable with some of the language that you use in the book. And I said, oh, I know. So now you fast forward, a couple more weeks, the daughter comes in for a visit. And I said, I was really nervous when your mom came in just because, out of 300 some pages of words, there was one word that I rethought maybe I should change before I published the book. And she said, don't let her fool you. She's not as reserved as you think she is. She probably enjoyed that chapter the most.
Yeah, she's probably waiting on the sequel.
Right. So no filter, right? Really important for me. No filter. You say what you feel when you feel it with no apologies, and you just be true to what you walk through.
Yeah, and be careful who's around when you say it, right?
Right. So we may have lost a couple of people on this one already, right?
That's
Because
all
I
right.
verbalized that word. I hope not. I hope not.
Yeah, probably.
Stay tuned. We'll calm it down maybe a little bit.
So let's talk about your journey. You went from modern dancer and powerlifting into chiropractic. So kind of walk us through that transition.
Yeah, it's interesting. So my dream was to be in New York as either a modern dancer or a choreographer. That was the dream as a child. No medicine, no chiropractic, nothing in that realm whatsoever. And when I went to school, I started at Arizona State. I was a dance major. I was miserable out there. ASU at the time, and for those of you that are old enough to remember, from ASU down in Tempe all the way up to Scottsdale was a dirt road. So there wasn't a whole lot of culture. There wasn't a whole lot of growth. It was pretty stagnant. Coming from Chicago, that just didn't feel right. So I wound up transferring to the University of Wisconsin-Madison and majored in exercise physiology with a minor in dance. And was sort of sad through the whole college experience because the goal was to go to New York University, of which I got into as a dance major and not academically. I'm not a great student, right? Like, I'll tell you a million things I know, but you give me an ABCD choice test and I probably will bomb that. So graduated with a degree in exercise physiology and went, what am I going to do? What do I do? Didn't know. So I wound up applying to physical therapy school. Oddly enough, I decided I wanted to become a physical therapist. And at the time, and this goes back decades, I couldn't get in. It was so competitive that nobody would take me. And I thought, okay, now I'm in trouble because I have no direction, don't know what to do. So my father said, go into sales. You'll be good at it. You'll make a lot of money. So I had the worst and best job I have ever had in my entire life. I was a long distance reseller. So I would knock on your door with a no soliciting sign, march right in, find the decision maker, insist on seeing your long distance bill, and talk you into signing on with a reseller in order to save, $3 to $300. And it was a what did you do for me today type job. And that's one of the reasons it was like the best and the worst. I hated it, actually. I dreaded going to work. It wasn't fun. There was no passion. But at the same time, it taught me basics of how to sell. And more importantly, how to uncover needs, meet needs, overcome objections, basically provide for people what they really actually need and want. That was in a sort of salesy, pitchy way, but I've since morphed that into a good technique, right? And after a couple of years of that, and I made a ton of money and I spent every dime. So in the morning, I would go to work, I would calculate my commission, and then I would spend the afternoon shopping, and I would spend every dime of the commission. And then I would walk back into the office to tell them all the great things that I did, and get the smiley face on the whiteboard and go home. So after a couple of years of pounding the pavement in Chicago in the bad weather and the short skirt and the high heels, deciding that's probably not going to work when I was 50, or at least I didn't want it to work when I was 50, it's weird. There was this conversation, and it's such a silly conversation, but somebody said to me, why would you have wanted to go to physical therapy school and be told what to do? Because back in the decades, it was more directive, right? In the physical therapy space versus autonomy. When you can go to chiropractic school and tell them what to do. And I went, I'd love to tell people what to do. That sounds brilliant. So oddly, I had only been to a chiropractic physician once after a car accident for a couple visits. There was I've got no great life-changing story like a lot of us do in that space. It was more of a business decision of I need a profession and I want to help people and I like the health or exercise space. So I signed up. And I didn't even vet any of the schools because I lived in the Chicagoland area. I didn't want to move. So National was the school. Turns out it was a good one for me because they're very primary care focused. Right. And I sat in the first OBGYN class that Frank Strahl, who turned out to be a very valuable mentor and friend to me, taught. And I'm like, why are we learning obstetrics and gynecology as a chiropractor? This is ridiculous. I want to be a sports chiro because I come from this powerlifting dance background. And he turned me around completely to the whole idea of primary care as a chiropractic physician, and I never looked back. So I continued my dance journey for a while. I danced professionally for quite a few years and realized you're pretty broke doing that. And I don't really enjoy being broke. It was fun for a few years, but again, didn't want to do that in my 50s. And, maintained a lifestyle of exercise and different types of exercise throughout the years. So carried those aspects through that I fell in love with when I was young. And here you and I are today, talking about how I got here. And I love it. It's a great profession. I'm super thrilled that by accident I almost happened into it, or even on a whim, and would never get out.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty routine story that I hear from people about the different pathways in. I mean, my mom and dad were both chiropractors, but I never ever thought about, well, I'll go do that. That's just what my parents did. And as I tell the story, it was, I went out and found out everything else I did not want to do in life, from working on a catfish farm to running a Firestone, all this stuff. And it's like, and it just clicked one day. I heard a speaker and he explained what my parents did that my parents really never sat down and explained to me because I'm just the kid, and it clicked. And literally 14 days later, I packed up the Datsun B210 with my wife and child and took off to Kansas City. I mean, literally just I'll go do that. So, and here I am 38 years later. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
It is. It's funny. I'll share with you a story. So my kids have been adjusted, right, since the day they're born. They pop out, they take their first breath, and they get adjusted, right?
Oh, and I'm so sorry you didn't get to have the at-home water birth or whatever it was you were looking for. Man, oh
right?
man.
Like the whole natural. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my oldest Reese, who's 22 and she's amazing, came to me 10 and a half weeks early, 2 pounds, 7 ounces. I had HELLP syndrome and it actually almost died giving birth to her. We're both very fortunate to be here to tell the story. It's really pretty amazing. she's my little miracle, but it's great, right? So she gets adjusted, and she was a little delayed because she was in the NICU on a breathing tube and a feeding, a chest tube. She had childhood emphysema and anyway, a whole array of symptoms. You can read about that in the book as well, right? I tell the story, but she's funny. So she's always been adjusted, but like, I don't make my kids make appointments, right? They don't come in as a patient. It's on the table in the basement or on the floor for
Sure.
somewhere, right, where there is no table, and you just take care of your kids. So she's at school and she's having horrible TMJ problems, and she's got some clicking. So a good friend of mine, Carson Muth, is in town in Grand Forks, North Dakota, where she goes to school. And I said, you got to go see Dr. Muth. Just make the appointment. She's hesitant, right? She makes the appointment. She comes home. She gets, okay, mom, it feels better. Starts clicking again. I said, you got to be consistent. Like, listen to him and get in and make regular appointments and see him. So she goes back, she sees him, he takes care of the issue. She's got no clicking. The TMJ feels great. She calls me up one day all excited because she loves to give me good news, and I love to hear good news. And she's like, Mom, you're not going to believe this. And I'm like, what happened? She goes, this chiropractic stuff is great. It really works. And I'm like, honey, you've been thinking of chiropractic for 22 years. You just didn't know it, right? She didn't associate what I do because, to your point, right? Like, didn't bring her in an educator like we do a new patient as to what we do and how it can help in the benefits. I just adjusted her, So now she got the real experience. So I've actually fired her as a patient and told her she now has to see Dr. Muth is her chiropractor. I'm no longer going to assume that role. So, it is interesting how the perception, right, of what we do and how we get into it. So she's going to be a pilot, not a chiropractor, but at least she'll be a patient for life, which is good.
Yeah, that's been an absolutely enjoyable journey to watch, following you and her on Facebook. That's really got to make you a proud mama, and your sons too.
Yeah.
Amazing kids, it looks like.
Yeah. Thank you. I push, and I push kindly, but it's important, want to encourage them. When I tell the story about how I wanted to go to New York and I didn't do it, and there were some family reasons there, and there wasn't that sort of like, do whatever you want and hope you get it right. I've always led my kids in that you can do anything you want in the world. And if you don't get it right, then learn from it and just shift, but I try not to hold them back in any regard. I let them fail. I let them succeed, and I'm here if they need me.
Yeah, that's a great approach. I was blessed to have parents who never told me that there was something that I couldn't do. Now, that doesn't mean I can go be an NBA player, but within reason, that mindset is absolutely critical. So, what inspired you to write Positively Altered, and what do you really hope people take away from it, Cindy?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when I diagnosed myself with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that's a pretty surreal experience to not sit across from another physician to hear it, but to tell yourself. I've always been a big advocate of journaling. It's been an important part of my life, and in and out of that. But I decided to journal my experience. So diary entries almost daily of how I felt, what I was scared of, what I was excited about, what I learned. And when I was done, I realized there was some really good content in there that I thought might be valuable. And then I shoved it away for quite a few years, and it just sat. And there were numerous times I thought to myself, I would love to put this in a book, because writing a book was always something I wanted to do. I just didn't know what topic it would ever be on.
Careful
But
what
I'm
you
not a
ask for.
writer. I mean, I just flunked my son's English class with him. I think we wrote a paper together and I got an F. So, like, not a skill set I ever thought I possessed well. And I kept pulling it out, and I rewrote some of the things. And finally, at one point, I thought, you know what, it's time. It's just the fear of being vulnerable with what I went through. There was enough time that had passed that I didn't care about that vulnerability anymore. If people learned things that were kind of scary to put out there. And I took that manuscript and actually hired a ghostwriter, which we admit he's a ghostwriter, and not to write the book, but just to reorganize it, help me with chapters, because I'm not a writer, put it in some semblance of a readable book. And quite frankly, there are some pieces of those journal entries that I've kept that will stay private because they're just important to me to keep private. And a good majority of it has been put out. And really, here's the message, right? Cancer is such a scary word to so many people, right? The minute you hear that, I think we run down this rabbit hole of negativity and fear and distress. And I really believe in the power of words. And what I wanted to do with the story is for people to realize that no matter where you are in life, there's going to be bad days, bad moments, bad experiences, right? Like, Like the crap is going to come. We don't stay on this earth, for a period of time without some of that in some way. And we can either become victim to it and succumb to a certain degree, and sometimes pretty severely, or we can welcome it in a weird way and say, bring it, right? Like, I got this. And I chose that direction of, okay, I've got a pretty huge obstacle. It can be very scary. It's obviously life-threatening. And I've got to find the gifts and the joy and the lessons, most importantly, even in that, so that when I'm on the opposite side of it, I will have learned something. And I'm grateful for it. I don't ever want to do it again, but truly grateful for the gifts that I got. So it's that, and it's very cliche, right? It's that one, if one person reads this book and it changes their life in a way that they can overcome something better, then I'm really glad I was vulnerable and put it out.
Well, I have a true confession for you. I had a really hard time picking up your book and reading it.
Mm-hmm.
And you were spot on in the book when you said that some people may not like it. Some people may find it offensive. I lost my wife at 32 years old to acute promyelocytic leukemia. And the other thing you said in the book is, if there's something about this book that bothers you, you're going to learn something as a result of it. And so it was a gift, because, a personal experience, being a single dad with an 11-year-old son and his mom's gone. That's been 34 years ago. And some things never get less painful. They just get more distant.
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple of different times I picked up the book and I started and I said, can't do this, not going to do this. Because I had a hard time with, how can anything positive come out of something like that? So, thank you for changing my perspective a little bit, a good bit, actually. If no one else gets anything out of the book, you can know that I did. So
It warms my heart.
yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking time to do it.
Yeah.
So
And you're not
share,
alone. You're not
huh?
alone. I know of lots of people that won't pick it up or can't get through it, and that's okay.
Yeah,
It's really okay, and you may never, and that's okay, because there's also a lesson and a gift in that experience as well.
yeah,
So if you
no,
can't, don't, right? It's all right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or listen to it with your granddaughter on the way on a road trip. uh, so your book
Right.
has 34 stories that really encourage the readers to embrace life and, either respond or react, which is what a lot of people do. What was one of the stories that really meant the most to you, or really touched you the most?
Oh, that's a great question. So the crappy answer, right, is they all do in a certain way. Um, I think what touched me the most, and I would change this answer depending on the week you ask me, right? Depending on what I'm going through. But I think really the postscript touches me the most, because I'm here and I'm here to tell the story, and I still have some really important people who are part of my life. And I'm still on this journey to make new connections and find the people that I resonate with, that I want in my life, and that I can provide that same gift for. And it's interesting for me to have written that 6 years later, because it was reflective, right? And that's where, and I probably cried through writing that entire chapter, quite frankly, and maybe even harder than when I was walking through the journey, because that's where you really do realize some people just truly shined and really do love me. And, that comes down to family, and not always family by blood, but just
Hmm.
family of the people that really truly feel that you're important. And, if we just have one person in our life that we can say that about, we're truly blessed.
No doubt. So you advocate for unapologetically living and loving your own way. So what advice do you have for people that might be struggling to embrace their uniqueness or their unique style and dealing with the world today?
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because we live in a very judgmental place. Everything we do is watched, especially now, right? There's always a ring camera somewhere, or social media, or something where we're caught doing whatever it is we're doing or saying. I think my best advice is just to crawl back into yourself and realize that when we make decisions, we make the best ones that we possibly can in that moment, and they're not always right, and to be okay with that. And no matter how hard, and I know how hard I try, not everybody's going to like me, love me, want to be around me. And and it's really okay, right? This mantra of it's really okay is super important to me. And when you feel good at the end of the day, and let's do it this way. My advice is go lay down at the end of the day, right? And whatever your routine is, incorporate this sort of self-conversation, which I do of, I review my day and I go, okay, am I good with my decisions? Did I like what I did? Was I kind to the people that I wanted to be kind to? And all of those types of questions, if I didn't like the answer, if I was like, I was a little short with that person in the store because I wasn't getting what I needed, or, I barked at the kids today because I was having a bad day at work, whatever it is, if I don't like the choices that I made, I'm grateful for the fact that I can recognize that. And I go, I can't wait till tomorrow so that I have an opportunity to do better. And it's the self-reflection that allows me to give myself grace and forgiveness, regardless of what everybody around me thinks. So, be silly, be quiet, be, loud, be whatever it is that you want to be, and,
Yeah.
and allow yourself the grace to forgive yourself for those things as long as you're enjoying it.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, hang tight. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be back with you in just a moment. Welcome back to our podcast with Dr. Cindy Howard. So Cindy, as a national speaker, what key messages do you aim to convey to your audiences about health, wellness, and living authentically? I know you teach on a lot of different subjects. What's your favorite subject that you teach on?
Right now, my absolute favorite is sexual health. And it's my favorite because nobody likes to talk about it, right? Or it's scary to talk about. And in the chiropractic space, especially, there's a lot of different seminars out there on hormone work, and hormones is just one aspect of sexual health. Or then we go down the rabbit hole of now a lot of us have to take sexual harassment type classes, and that can be very uncomfortable and even sometimes mundane. And we incorporate in some of the work that we do, both where I speak by myself or in panels. I mean, we talk about everything. We talk about the correlation of low back pain to prostatitis and vaginal infections. We discuss gender identity. We discuss hormone work. We discuss what actual menstruation is supposed to be like, because most people don't even understand what's normal menstruation, both men and women. We actually say the words penis and vagina out loud because so
Oh my God.
many, right? Right? But so many people are making, you know what? Okay, so here's the funny story about that. So when I teach, I always refer to Google because, that's the best reference for everything. Clearly not, but sometimes we use it anyway. And I Googled how many different words there are for penis and how many words for vagina. Do you know, and I hope I'm going to get my numbers correct, I think there are 326 words for penis, something like that, 400, I can't even remember now, whatever it is. It's a lot of words for penis. And there's like 200 words for vagina. So I tell everybody, if we would just learn to say penis and vagina, we wouldn't have to sit in a room to come up with a couple hundred more words for vagina, because it's not fair that men have more words for penis. So I make everybody say penis and vagina. So I'm like knee, elbow, spine, tendon, ligament, penis, vagina. It just shouldn't be weird to say the words. So we try to help everybody overcome that stigma that sex, activity, symptoms, disease, anything surrounding those topics shouldn't really be taboo. And we want people comfortable having those conversations because it's part of who we are.
So I have to tell you, some other things popped into my mind when I was listening to your book and your, I don't know if you call it a fascination for the word shit, or that that apparently you can learn so much about someone from their crap. And so I thought, well, do I introduce her as a physiologist? Do I introduce her as a chirophysiologist, or what's and the other thing that popped into my mind is, give me some crap in a cup and I can tell you about the crap in your body. So, that was a bit of an eye opener. I've heard many nutritionists, but they're usually talking about what you're putting in and not what you're putting out. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of interesting moments in listening to your book, Cindy.
So before I became the sex doctor, right, I was the poop doctor, because that used to be my favorite topic.
There's another.
But I'm actually, nobody's ever introduced me that way. I think I'm going to steal that with your permission, and we'll give you credit for it. But the joke is you can't get through a meal with me without having a conversation about poop, because it's just so important. Actually, I was even laughing. I was hanging out with my son and his girlfriend last night, and we were discussing farting. And most girls are embarrassed to even admit they fart. And I'm like, everybody passes gas. Like, I don't know why we can't have this conversation. Like, it's a normal bodily function. We all do it. Okay, sometimes it's louder and stinkier than others, but again, that gives me information if it's louder and stinkier than others. But another subject that we just need to be comfortable discussing, and it was fun to mortify the children a little bit. We didn't get it on video, unfortunately, so it's not going to make TikTok, but maybe we'll reproduce that one day.
It does happen to everyone. My lovely wife, Jean, when she and I were dating, and the first time one ripped, I said, well, damn, now I'm going to have to marry her because I've heard her fart.
She doesn't have to go in the closet and hide it anymore, right? Or stick her on the side of the car and do it. Yeah, it's out, right?
We're there. So might as well go ahead and get married.
Yeah. Do you love, honor, respect, and agree to listen to the farts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. We have to change.
I hear some whispers about your upcoming podcast. So kind of give us a sneak peek into what people might hear when they listen in.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. So as much as I've been speaking in the chiropractic space, now the goal is to diversify and get more keynote type speaking on stage with the idea of overcoming adversity. So the new brainchild is we created a podcast, and it is called the Positively Altered Podcast, which comes from the title of the book. And we're going to have all kinds of guests. So it is health-based. And maybe not, but with no filter. Again, say whatever it is that you want to say. If people want to listen, great. If they want to turn us off, that's okay too, but come back next week because it might be different. And just sharing ideas and thoughts in a pretty concise way. They're going to be probably anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes. We're pre-recording a bunch now. And just to educate, right? Like, I want people educated out there in a way that they can get information they may not know how to find. And at the same time, as I always say at the end of the podcast, truly become positively altered in some way from the experience that they had listening.
Yeah. So if people want to book you as a speaker or get your book Positively Altered, what's the best way to connect with you, Cindy?
Oh, awesome. So reach out at hello@drcindyspeaks.com. That would be a great way to email. If you go to our website, or I should say my website, but that's not really true. I have a team. Our website is drcindyspeaks.com, and you can join my community and get my newsletter. We don't bombard you every day with emails, but occasionally you can reach out. There's a contact page there and figure out how to buy the book, or just go to Amazon. You can listen to it. You can read it. Soft cover, hard cover, use it as, firewood. It's got a purpose one way or another. So, check it out. And please, when you do, I would love to hear what you think. Again, what chapter touched you? Was it hard to read? Was it not hard to read? And give me that feedback. It warms my heart to hear, how it makes a difference, good or bad, in somebody's life.
And for those of you that like to listen rather than read, it's also available on Audible. Yeah, awesome.
It is.
So I've got some just for fun questions, and I think I may know the answer to a couple of these now after having read the book. Who's your hero and why?
Who's my hero and why? You know what? Today I'm going to answer that question. My mother. My mother was diagnosed with multiple myeloma and amyloidosis, and the doctors gave her 6 months to live. And I despise that. Nobody knows how long you have to live. And my mom fought literally for 8.5 years. But more importantly, when you called her and said, "Mom, how do you feel?" she said, "Cured." And there is no cure for amyloidosis. And it was just her mental acumen walking through something she knew that would be her ultimate demise is just inspiring. And as much as I know I had a good attitude through my experience, doesn't even touch what my mother was capable of doing. So she should be an inspiration for everybody.
Sounds like the fruit didn't fall far from the tree, Cindy.
I'm practicing every day.
You already talked about the worst job that you ever had, so we will skip that one. What do you think you'd be doing today if you weren't doing what you're doing now?
I'd be dancing. If I followed the truth, yeah, I would. If I followed, and I'd be broke. I'd be waitressing in New York. I'd be living in some crappy little studio apartment, or I'd have a bunch of roommates because we'd all be broke. And I'd be on stage dancing, loving what I do, and wishing I had more money.
Wow. Thanks so much for spending some time today with us, Cindy. And thank you all for listening to the ChiroSphere podcast. Please subscribe and share the podcast with your friends, and let us know who you'd like to hear from in the future, and we'll do our best to get them on. If you want to learn more about Chiro Health USA and how we can help you develop a compliant, profitable discount strategy that will absolutely grow your practice, income, and most important, profitability. Call us at 888-719-9990 or visit our website at chusa.com to find out why ChiroHealth is the network that works for chiropractic and you. Thanks again, Cindy.
My pleasure. Thank you for the gift.